a warm, warm welcome to each one of you. And beautiful, beautiful to be gathered here together to take care of our lives by practicing Dhamma. And that is a beautiful thing, given all the possible options. And it's a very wholesome, uplifting choice. So, this is our Sunday Sounds program, which means, as usual, we'll have about a half an hour of meditation, about a half an hour of Dhamma talk, and then some time for questions and reflections and comments at the end, and the final dedication of merit. And before all that, I would just want to make a few announcements. So we have, for folks who are in the area, we have brunch coming up on November 9th, hosted by Sachadara, Todd Brown. And that happens right after the talk. And we also have we have a retreat happening in November at Barry Center for Buddhist Studies, a retreat on art, Buddhist art, and how it reflects emotions that we might feel on the path of awakening. Also, there is a class hosted by San Francisco Zen Center that's happening. That's an online class, 4 weeks of discussion about what we mean by non-self in Buddhism. What does that really mean, that term? So that's happening in December on Monday nights. And then lastly, next weekend, on the 25th, I will be hosting, as I have done for many years, the annual event for Buddhist Global Relief. It's a beautiful nonprofit started by Bhikkhu Bodhi, Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi, who does many of the translations that I work with here, that I share with you. And it's a nonprofit that is combating hunger and raising women's education around the world. So if you want to come and hear a little bit about the work we do, and you can sign up for that at Buddhist Global Relief. Oh, there you go. Those are the announcements for this week. And yeah, so today's meditation. Well, let's just see where it goes. Let's just start with the body, as we always do. So you can begin just by establishing a balanced and relaxed posture. Hi, welcome. Yes, please find a seat anywhere. Please remove your shoes. Shoes. Yeah. Thank you. So just finding your posture. Maybe some movement in the body. And really sensing the weight of the body on your seat. That natural stability. Releasing the belly. And allowing the body to settle even more. And moving the attention up the torso. Perhaps noticing the breath, breathing the body. No need to change it in any way. And perhaps allowing the muscles of the chest and the shoulders to become a little wider, a little softer, leaving plenty of room for this open-hearted practice. Just receiving the sensations of the breath wherever you find them. Checking in for any pleasant sensations in the feelings of the breath. Perhaps the coolness, the sound, the brush of the air on your skin. The fullness in the chest. Maybe some pleasant aspect of the breath that can come into awareness. Attending to the breath with care, aware of inhalations and exhalations. Which is which? And perhaps after some time of attending to the breath, you also notice that there are thoughts and other sensations present, even as you are aware of the in-breath and the out-breath. Releasing any tension or any effort to control the breath, and just resting on the sensations as they come into awareness. So with that, we will move to the Dhamma talk for today. And I'm a little under the weather, so please bear with me if it sounds off. But we'll chant nonetheless. And this is the homage to the triple gem. And the triple gem is the way that we refer to Buddha, the historical person, but also that quality of awakening as it can show up in each of us. The Dhamma, which means the teachings, and it also means something like the reality that the teachings are describing. And also about 25 or so other things. Dhamma is a very complex word. And Sangha. Sangha is the community, the vast and varied community of millions and millions of people who are on this path in one way or another. So if you would like to chant together, everyone online, please keep your mics muted, except for Claudia, who's doing the translation. And there are some sheets there if folks can't see it on the screen here in person. All right. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. Someone recently asked me, what is the purpose of meditation? And I thought, oh, that's a complex question, huh? And rather than rattle off a set of benefits of meditation, I thought I would take a little bit different approach. Not because there aren't benefits, there certainly are. But to approach practice from the perspective of those benefits would be to miss out on an incredible opportunity, actually. To go from looking to get something and shift to actually discovering the incredible wisdom that is already here. So I thought I would start, since we're taking a different approach, with a poem. And this is a poem by a woman that I really, really appreciate. Her name is Izumi Shikibu. Actually, Izumi is her name. Shikibu is her title. And she is from the late 10th century, early 11th century Japanese imperial court. She was the imperial court poet of the time, the most honored poet in all of Japan at that time, Izumi Shikibu. And there's this lovely book called Ink Dark Moon, in which Jane Hirschfield and Mariko Aratani have done some translations of poems by Izumi Shikibu and by another poet named Ono no Komachi. We're not going to look at Komachi-san's poetry today, but we're going to look at one from Izumi Shikibu and see something about whether this sounds familiar, whether this sounds like something you may have experienced. So first I'll read the poem and I'll tell you a little bit about the backstory, and then we can see what Dhamma she's pointing to here. So the poem goes like this. Should I leave this burning house of ceaseless thought and taste the pure rain's single truth falling upon my skin? Yeah, let me say it again. Should I leave this burning house of ceaseless thought and taste the pure rain's single truth falling upon my skin? Question mark. So beautiful, right? This tiny, tiny gem of a poem. And maybe that's what meditation has felt like sometimes, this burning house of ceaseless thought. That you sit down and what you experience is this tumble, this waterfall rushing by of sensations and reactions and plans and past and fantasy and all sorts of things. And you think to yourself, oh, I'm not doing it right. Right? Or I wish it wasn't like that. Or how long will it take before I have a moment of quiet? How long do I have to sit still before this slows down? Or any number of other thoughts that you add to your thoughts, huh? Thoughts and reactions that you add to the thoughts that you're seeing. And the burning house, ooh, the burning house, right? So this, I want to say that there is a literary reference there, actually a couple of literary references there. But just kind of intuitively, right? That sounds uncomfortable to be in the burning house, to feel that intensity of it. You know? So the literary reference here is actually this tiny little poem has 3 references actually to the Lotus Sutra. The Lotus Sutra is one of the Mahayana sutras, one of the sutras from the, you could say, the second major branch of Buddhism. And there's a parable, a story about some children in a burning house, and the father is trying to get them to leave the house, but they're preoccupied with their toys and stuff. They are not listening to him. And he's getting more and more concerned. So he promises them a chariot, because it's back in the day. I guess today it would be like, I don't know what, a Lamborghini? I'm not sure exactly. A Ferrari? A Tesla? No. Um, he promises them a chariot if they will come out of the house, that there are these chariots waiting for them. And so they all come out of the house, and then they realize, oh, the house was burning, that there aren't any chariots actually, but the house was burning. So this is the parable of the burning house that we see in the Lotus Sutra. And the metaphor that's happening there is something like, here we are in our lives, occupied with our toys and occupying ourselves with our toys and with our worries. And then the sound of the Dhamma comes, the sound of some wisdom comes, and it may take a while before we start to really take that in, before we start to even relate it to our own lives. And that's one of the most interesting things that I want to point out here, right? So sometimes somebody will say, oh, I heard XYZ teaching, and I'm not sure how that relates to my life. And I would say, if it's Dhamma, it relates to your life. It is really a matter of you discerning how, what is being described there, right? And what I love about that metaphor of the kids, they come out of the burning house and there aren't toys there. What there is freedom from that fire. A much greater gift than a chariot, right? So in the same way, the Dhamma is like that. When we step into a life of Dhamma and away from trying to distract ourselves from the truths of our lives, then we find a tremendous freedom that we didn't actually know was there, that we didn't actually know even was possible until we took that step. And Izumi is talking about exactly that, right? She says, she's asking herself the question, shall I leave this burning house of ceaseless thought and do what? Step outside into the rain. Feel the rain's truth on my skin, the truth of the experience of this moment. Indeed, I would say that the Dhamma asks us this question all the time. Are you willing to take that step to really receive the truth of your lived experience? Moment after moment after moment. So the burning house is one of the references in the poem. The other two references, the rain is also a literary reference. So in the Lotus Sutra, there is this description of the Dharma is like rain. It falls equally upon all beings, all creatures, all things, right? Which is to say that the Dhamma is here for you to discover. The Dhamma is equally accessible to you. And that is another question sometimes. Yeah? So somebody also recently asked me, what was it like to be a woman in the Dhamma? What was it like to be in a tradition that has, in many traditions actually, because Buddhism is many traditions, and I have been in two of them, deeply in two of them, and very male dominated most of the time. I have certainly experienced discrimination as a woman, even at my master's temple in Japan. But I made the choice to carry on, and I made the choice to say, I will find the Dhamma teaching of even that. That the Dhamma belongs to me just as much as it belongs to them, or to any of us. The Buddha made that incredibly clear, right? He, after his awakening, spent 45 years walking around and telling people, you can do what I have done. He didn't go around saying, you must worship me and I'm the only human being who will ever accomplish this, right? Some people think that. Many people have asked me, oh, do we think anybody awakened after the Buddha has ever woken up after the Buddha? And I have to laugh. Well, of course. Otherwise, why bother? Why do you think it has continued? Because the Dhamma equally belongs to each of you. It is not one person's property. Mm. And that's where this beautiful, so that's this what Izumi refers to as the single truth. So that is also a reference to the Lotus Sutra. And each of these references also goes back further, right? So the burning, for example, was the Buddha's second discourse after his awakening. He gave a discourse that we refer to as the fire sermon, where he talks about the experience of the senses burning with dukkha, burning with unsatisfactoriness or suffering or difficulty, right? So all of these things go back. The house and leaving the house, when it said that after his awakening, very shortly after his awakening, the Buddha said to himself, basically, house builder, you will build the house no more, right? The house is our delusion, the way we construct a sense of a limited, separate self from the rest of the world, right? So these references also have their roots in early Buddhism. And then that third reference, the single truth. So the Lotus Sutra, the whole sutra is actually saying that the Dhamma has only one way, and that way is the way of awakening. No matter which vehicle, no matter which school, no matter which tradition, it has that way, it goes that way toward awakening. And indeed, as I mentioned before, as I mentioned last week, that also has its roots in the early Buddhist teachings. It says that one of right view, so not anyone, not everyone, but those who have set forth on the understanding, a basic understanding that what you do matters, and that can lead to greater difficulty or less difficulty in your life as a start. That will, if you follow the path, will lead inevitably toward awakening. It slants toward awakening. If you put in that right view as a condition, right? So those are the references there. And I had a framework that I wanted to share with you, but I don't think there's time for that. So let me just talk about one aspect of it. And that is what to do with thoughts then. How to respond to thoughts when you see them in meditation or when you see them at any time. What are you doing? What can you be doing with them? And so it's important to know, first of all, how are you relating to the thoughts? How are you framing the thoughts? And by that I mean, are you engaging with the content of the thought, or are you engaging with the impermanence of the thought, or are you engaging with the process nature of the thought, how it is related to other things? You have to decide, right? So if what you're seeing is a story or a fantasy or something about the past or a memory, things like that, right? That is a collection of thoughts that you have shaped into something that has some continuity for you, right? So there's some sense experience in there. So sense experiences are also thoughts, right? And there's some reactions and responses that have happened in there, and that creates a story. So I would give you a really good example of this. So uh, when I first started practicing longer retreats at San Francisco Zen Center many years ago, uh, my knees would get very painful, very, very painful. And I sort of stayed with it because I wanted to not have to sit in a chair. I liked the sensation, the feeling, most of the time, other than the knees, I liked the sensation of sitting on the cushion. And and so, but what would happen is if the pain in the knee got very intense, then I would start to have this thought process, oh my gosh, my knee, it's getting very painful. And, you know, I could injure myself. And then if maybe I would have to go to the doctor. And then, gosh, if I really injure myself, then I have to have surgery or something. Then I can't meditate. And then who am I if I can't meditate? And, you know, this whole storyline would be crafted in just a matter of moments, right? Around this intense pain in the knee. Mind you that I would move. You should not injure yourself. It's not necessary. I want to make it absolutely clear that it's not necessary to injure yourself with meditation. That's actually an unskillful thing to do. Okay, don't do that. Don't hurt your capacity to practice by practicing hard. Do you know what I mean? By forcing yourself. You can practice well, you can practice diligently without injuring your capacity to practice. That's important to remember. But anyway, so that was this whole story that I had around the pain in the knee. Mm. And I started to be able to tell at some point, oh, right, I see myself telling myself that story again. Oh, my knee hurts, and I can see that this story wants to be told again, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. It's just thoughts, right? So first, you should keep in mind that thoughts have the tendency to do that. In fact, the Buddha said something like a plantain tree, right? That our reactions to things can be like a plantain tree, like the leaves of a plantain tree, they wrap around each other. And it makes it look like it has a trunk and it stands up straight and all that good stuff. But as my dad learned when he overwatered the plantain tree, it doesn't actually have anything but leaves. It doesn't have a solid core, so it just falls over if the leaves rot. Right? So in the case of thoughts, not to get too far afield and too many metaphors for you, but in the case of thoughts, reactions especially have this tendency to sort of wrap around themselves. And by doing that, feel more solid than they actually are. So your task as a practitioner is just to unpack that a little bit, to see how it is that this story is a collection of thoughts and sensations that you've put together in a particular way. That's all. Just to see that clearly, right, loosens up some of the hold that the story has on you. Then it's not quite so compelling. It's like, oh, right, I get it. It's like a bag of marbles or it's like a bunch of leaves. It's not anything that can define my reality unless I allow that to be so. Mm. So know when you are relating to the content this way. Observe that. It's a useful thing to do. It's actually a useful thing to do. Mm. We tell stories all the time. In fact, you could say that the suttas are largely a collection of stories. Stories about the past, stories that the Buddha crafted, that other teachers have crafted. We tell stories in many beautiful ways. They can be useful and skillful, and they can be not so useful and not so skillful. So really start to see through that, unpack that each time. And also know one other thing, which is that when you're relating to the content of the thoughts, and again, by that I mean I'm contrasting that with the sort of process by which thought arises. That's another thing. Maybe I will talk about that next week, because that's also something that we're seeing in meditation. But when you're relating to the content of the thought, the stories, the emotions, the analysis, whatever it is, planning, whatever it is that's going on in the thought, the main tool that you have for discerning the skillfulness or unskillfulness of the thing is the precepts, actually, the ethical precepts. Is this causing harm? Is this right speech? Is this something which will lead to sexual misconduct, to abusive speech, to killing, to lying, to stealing, right? Is this something which is which becomes the reasoning behind unskillful choices, right? So that's a time when you have to say, okay, then you need to set that down. You need to take that story apart and you need to set that down and you need to see through what is actually so compelling about that for you. And if it is a skillful content, if it's a wholesome content, if it is a story that helps you to lead a more ethical life, to make better choices, then great. Maybe it is a story that you tell yourself with some frequency, you know. Like I like to tell you all stories about what's happened in my practice, right? The time of saving the fish from when he jumped out of the creek, right? Small stories like that can be very uplifting. So know that ultimately, as our lovely poem from Izumi Shikibu demonstrates, and as the Dhamma is always demonstrating, wisdom in the form of knowing the truth of your life begins with a choice. It begins with the choice to really receive deeply the the lived experience. That this body and mind is having. Do not let yourself be fruiting away your life with the toys and the distractions that help you to avoid the taste of the rain on your skin. Make that choice. Don't waste this lifetime. Okay, friends. So, as usual, we have a bit of time for comments, questions, reflections on the talk, on the meditation, on what's going on in your practice. Yes, Debbie, please.
Thank you again. That was, I'm not sure I can say how beautiful that was. It's just really, I'm just was very moved by that talk and how you wove the poetry, and just really lovely and meaningful. Thank you so much. Very, very grateful. I'll just mention I'm back for after a month of travels, turned positive with COVID, which is why I'm not with you.
Oh,
Very mild case, but
okay.
Following CDC guidelines. But this past month has been a really interesting and in many ways transformative Dharma experience. I've been trying to be with the Dharma in being with other people almost all the time, and noticing reactivity, being on the path, seeing death in a lot of places. That's a focus of our course this month. And it was somehow being away from home made that in some ways easier to notice, because of everything being so different all the time, to notice those reactions and to be present. And it was, I'm grateful again, just for being on the path and having your guidance on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. I'm feeling a lot of mudita, a lot of empathetic joy for your Dharma experience. And yes, hearing your reflection, I think, yeah, this is why people go on pilgrimage, or this is why people would practice at different places. This is why I moved away from everybody in the world that I knew to live in Japan for a while, right? That sometimes we need to step away from. We were just talking about this morning, actually. We benefit from stepping away from whatever it feels like our regular everyday space of mind and physical location. And that brings a kind of newness and a freshness to things, right? This is also why we go away on residential retreats, to just step out of everything for a little bit and find actually that it's not that you um, become instantly something different, but rather that you see how this thing expresses itself in another situation. So thank you for the reflection, Debbie. Hamsa has her hand up.
Oh, wow. Such a lovely talk, Dhamma talk. Halfway into it, it just, I thought, oh my God, it's bringing tears because you are such a beautiful Dhamma teacher. I just so appreciate how you convey the Dhamma to us. And I'm tearing up as I talk about this. I'm so full of gratitude for you. And as you know, yes. And as you know, I just returned. I spent a month of September at the Forest Refuge. It's a beautiful, beautiful place up there at IMS in Massachusetts, and it was hard, and it was truly amazing, and it was gorgeous, and it was everything, all of those things. And then I came back, and as you know, because you helped me put myself back together, I kind of a little bit crashed and burned because I was mixing in. It was challenging coming back into this conceptual world
Mm.
and just watching the mind and its thoughts get kind of convoluted and papancha and all that kind of stuff happening. And I'm back on track. Um, and again, here, your talk just awakened that samvega within me, that spiritual urgency of, no, I don't want to miss out on that rain on my skin. I don't want to be caught up with, I just have to do it moment to moment when the papancha arises. Um, and again, bringing in that beautiful poetry, um, and your selection of words, allowing us to just digest a few words, because and that takes us so deep. That takes me so deep. So I've said enough. I'm just bursting with mudita and gratitude. And thank you.
Thank you, Hamsa. Thank you. I'm also feeling a lot of mudita for you, empathetic joy for your practice. And yes, Hamsa also talked about the other side of the coin, right? So sometimes we step out of our everyday and put ourselves in a practice situation, and it feels even more challenging. I can promise you that Japan was a very challenging practice there, or just going on retreat sometimes can be very, very demanding practice, because we face ourselves, we face the ways in which we participate in our own suffering, or we face the ways in which we have developed these habits that can feel like they are pushing us very hard, even when we know we want to go in a different direction. So just as Hamza said, the path can be quite winding, and with the support of the Sangha, we find our way back. We find our way back again and again. We find our way to more ease, more clarity, and more urgency, more willingness. Yes, yes, I will make that choice again and again. And so hang in there for yourselves, even when it seems like things are going off the rails. Hang in there for yourselves. Stay close to your Dhamma friends. And yes, thank you again, Hamza, for the reflection. So I saw in the chat that there was a request for just specific detail about the poem. So again, the name of the book, I would just hold it up a little closer here. It's called The Ink Dark Moon. The Ink Dark Moon. And it is by Jane Hirschfield. The subtitle is Love Poems. They are not all love poems, but some of them are. Love Poems by Ono no Komachi and Izumi Shikibu, Women of the Ancient Court of Japan. And it's translated by Jane Hirschfield, who herself is a practitioner and a Dhamma teacher. She sometimes actually gives poetry Dhamma retreats at Tassajara, the Zen Mountain Monastery out in California, where I trained for years, and together with Mariko Aratani. And it's not a new book. It's from a while back, but I'm sure you can find it used, if not new. And yeah, there's beautiful poetry in there. Izumi Shikibu is also known for being quite a prolific poet. She wrote about 1,000 poems. There's another poem that I may share with you next time when we talk about some other ways to relate to thought and meditation. But she wrote she wrote some love poetry, she wrote some Dhamma, insightful poetry. And in the end, she was very, very, much revered, much honored woman in the court. So wait, so there's, oh, okay, good. Somebody put the link in there. Thank you so much, Kodo and Hamza, for putting some more information there. All right. Well, we still have a bit of time. Any other last questions or reflections? Yes, Carolyn, please.
Thank you so much. I want to put that poem on my altar. I just want it right in front of me all day long.
Nice.
Oh, so great. I have a question about, it's really about like how the plant chain tree becomes solid and kind of forms up into something really persuasive. And while you were talking, I realized like I think that I see, and I want to ask you what you think, that mm, there's a relationship between the intensity of the Vedana, the pleasant, the pain, and a propensity to believe the story.
Mm.
Like the stronger the Vedana, the more true the story seems. Is that, I wonder if that's true or not. I don't know. It seems true.
Could be. I mean, I definitely think that we take stronger Vedana more seriously, and we like stronger Vedana because it asserts our sense of self. Like, I really hate this, or I really love this, right? That's why neutral Vedana is difficult to attend to, because it's not allowing us it doesn't give us such a good foothold for establishing our identity for or against a thing if it's very neutral, right? So the stronger the Vedana, I would say, yeah, it's more compelling, and it does tend to solidify our story because we're that much more identified with it. Whether we hate it or we love it, we are relating ourselves to that, you know. And that is an interesting dynamic. Sometimes you see this very clearly, like in teenagers, you know, we define ourselves, we define our identity, and we define ourselves as, in large part, as what we are not, as much as what we are. So we have to be very careful also about that, right? That strong push away is also a way of establishing a very strong story or a very strong identity. And again, the clarity of this what is basically a constellation of thought moments, a constellation of experience moments, that is what helps to break it apart. It can feel like a very dry practice, but actually that kind of very, very specific, okay, so unpleasant Vedana in the knee gets very unpleasant, and then there is this identification, right? There's this perception, oh, that's not good, right? There's this sankhara reaction to it. Ah, right, you know, or like maybe the perception is like harmful pain or something like that. And then there is a sankhara building upon that, right? Oh, I'm going to get hurt. I'm going to get injured. I'm not going to be able to be the person that I want to be, which is a meditator, if I injure my knee very badly, right? So you see how I saw, anyway, how if I can identify the components, the constellation that is becoming this solid thing that is threatening me, right? Because that's really what's happening there, is that my sense of self is feeling sort of threatened by the charge, the intensity of the pain. Then I can kind of break it up, right? Then it will dissipate much more easily than if I feel like, no, this is me. This is me, and I, you know, and it is a thing that defines me in a way. And that's the great irony of the Dhamma, right? So the irony of the Dhamma is you are in fact defined by the thing that's happening in the moment. You are that thing, right? So the pain in the knee, that is the experience of the moment. That is the only thing actually that can truthfully be said. There is that contact, there is that Vedana, there is that perception, there is that response or reaction, there is that consciousness, that moment of consciousness of that experience. That is the only truth that actually can be asserted. But it's the you that you build around that or on top of that that is a fiction. Right? So this is the tricky part of the Dhamma, right? Is to really be willing to accept what's here, but not create the fiction around it. Yeah. Thank you, Carolyn. That's a good, very helpful reflection there for launching us into some clarity about that. Yes, Flynn.
Yeah, that was really helpful. So I want to see if you can help me understand in your example, what would be the fiction of the you that was created in the pain situation?
Well, the fiction of the me in the pain situation is I'm a meditator. I'm a meditator who can sit on this cushion in this way. And then if that capacity is no longer here, then who am I anymore? Then what's, you know, then that sense of identity around that is threatened. Versus, right, a clear, well, this body can do this thing now, and that doesn't define me. That just happens to be what the body is capable of doing now. That happens to be the set of conditions that are present in this moment. And I know that this body will not always be in this form. It will eventually change. It may or may not. Thankfully, I'm 61 now. I'm still able to sit that way. I didn't injure myself. But neither of those situations would be true. So for example, if I had injured my knee and I wasn't able to sit cross-legged anymore, it wouldn't mean that I wasn't still a meditator. I could be. I could very well be, right? And conversely, if I don't injure the knee and I continue to be this thing that can sit like this, that's only a momentary arising. It doesn't really, it's not possible to say that it belongs to something more permanent called me.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, is that?
Yes, thank you. That's
Okay.
helpful.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Great. You're welcome. Thank you, Flynn, for the question. All right, folks, I think we have pretty well arrived at the end of our time here, at the end of the reflections. So, Miss Dana, are you there? Are you willing and able to help with the announcement?
I am here.
Thank you.
Giving to the Dassanaya Buddhist Community supports our guiding teacher Dhammadīpā, the physical location at the vihara, and allows us to continue to offer Buddhist teachings in support of the awakening of all beings. Our support pages are on the website under the Support tab, Donate, Volunteer, or Offer Materials. In addition, about once a month, we send out a newsletter with a note from Dhammadīpā and meditation, class, and retreat schedules. Thank you so much.
Thank you, dear Dana. And yes, much, much gratitude to everyone who makes this community possible by being present, by volunteering their time, by offering material and financial resources. It can't happen without all of you. It really cannot. And the other quick announcement that I want to make before I dedicate the merits today is, as many of you know, my daughter is just days away from having a baby. She's going to have her first child, which means my first grandchild. Yay! And that means that things can change quite suddenly. So keep an eye on the website, because it could be that next Sunday I would be giving this talk virtually and people wouldn't be able to come in person because I might be in the hospital or something waiting for baby to come. So just keep an eye on the website in case there are in-person events that are becoming virtual or things that are paused for a week or two while I happen to be attending to my daughter, who is very close, and very well. So thank you all also for folks who have offered some joyful support for her and the baby's well-being. Everything's going well so far. So yes, big heart for that, definitely. All right, so may the merits, the beneficial karmic momentum and karmic results that we have put into motion with our practice here today, may it be a cause and a condition for our freedom from all delusion, that we might find the Dhamma expressing itself as us, as these lives we're living, that we might find our connection to the Sangha and to the Buddha, and that all beings would benefit from our practice and find absolute peace By the power of the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, and each one's efforts, may all beings be liberated. Bye, everyone.
Gracias, Claudia. Chao.
Gracias, Claudia.
Gracias, Claudia. Gracias a todos.
Gracias, María. Hasta luego. Bye, everybody.